Okay, the next, we're going to have some discussions about diesel emissions, and that's going to be from Maggie Striz Calnin, who is from Southwest Detroit Environmental Vision. Please, Maggie.
Hi, folks. Thank you for having me here, Pastor, and folks for coming out. I'm going to do my own little display here, try to get our badge out where we go. A lot of heavy information there, and I hear what people are saying about what can we do about these pollutants that we're exposed to. So I'm going to touch on that. My talk is pretty brief. I'd be happy to talk with others after this and continue the conversation so that we can impact and affect change on the air pollution issue. So I work with Southwest Detroit Environmental Vision. I grew up in Melvindale, was up in Lansing, working and going to school up there, and have been back down in Metro Detroit for about 3 years. And really, I feel committed and honored to be able to work with Southwest Detroit Environmental Vision to start to address a little more directly in my life again with the community issues that I and my family were facing when I was growing up across the way. I'm going to keep my comments primarily on traffic-related pollution, diesel. At Southwest Detroit Environmental Vision, it's been a focus for us because it's obviously an issue here in Southwest Detroit. 10,000 heavy-duty trucks come across the Ambassador Bridge daily. That's not counting the other vehicles that operate in and around Southeast Michigan, both diesel and gasoline. Why does diesel pollution matter? We learned from Dr. Reiners about what's in the air, and particulate matter and other toxins are part of what kicks out from a diesel vehicle engine. Over years, exposure to diesel pollution is deadly. Those medical concerns that Dr. Reiner laid out, heart disease, cancers, respiratory conditions, over years, over time, those can lead to an early death. A lot of us, I think, and our family members have experienced death in their 50s, 60s, when, by and large, life expectancy is increasing in other places in the U.S. In the moment, diesel pollution can trigger asthma flare-ups, as was discussed, emphysema, COPD flare-ups. So it's something that's very important for us to be aware of and make change around. Traffic-related air pollution, even minor health effects like nausea, headaches, dizziness, this might be something that you or family members are experiencing and you're like, yeah, we can't quite pinpoint what this is. I go to the doctor, they try to check it out. We don't know. It might be related to diesel pollution that you're exposed to, and so there are certain things we can do to help to mitigate those impacts, those symptoms in our own lives and our families' lives, as well as affect change politically. And then again, with minor health impacts, nausea, dizziness, headaches, it's minor for otherwise healthy people, but if you have compounding health problems, when you experience some of those otherwise minor health impacts, it can trigger your more serious health problems. And we don't have to just accept that our lives need to be limited because of where we live and that there's a pollution load here. Why should we change only when they're the ones who stink, right? So it's both and. There are things we can do in our own lives and for our family's health, and there are things we can do to change the system. So for diesel pollution, since about 2008, our organization, Southwest Detroit Environmental Vision, has been focusing on this more specifically. Community members in our listening sessions that we do annually called out diesel pollution as one of the main priorities. So we've been working to be responsive to that. One program that we operate is our Clean Diesel program. We work with trucking companies and others who operate fleets with medium and heavy duty diesel vehicles and try to get them to replace that equipment early. When we can, we link them up with grant opportunities to help cover the cost so that the cost isn't as much of a barrier if that's one of their hang-ups. Otherwise, diesel equipment can remain in service for decades. One group that we were working with has equipment, the engine's original date is 1968, still operating today. That is not a modern pollution control, and they have no regulation that directs them to replace that equipment. Of course, if they buy a new piece of equipment, the new engines have to meet standards. So that's what we're working to do, is replace out that legacy equipment, on-road and stationary, like construction equipment or generators, to cut pollution directly. Since around 2008, with the groups that we've worked with, it's led to a direct decrease or elimination of 35,000 tons of diesel pollution. So that's one big chunk. There's still more to do. We keep doing that work with folks who are here today and those who couldn't be here today. More recently, in 2015, Southwest Detroit Environmental Vision kicked off an anti-idling campaign. And so with that, we're working directly with neighbors, residents, folks who work in the area but may not live here, to help identify idling hotspots. So engine idling is when a vehicle runs its engine, but it's not doing the work it was designed to do. It's not moving forward. It's just sitting there idle, right? Idle hands, idle engines. That's not a good thing. And so we call on folks here and others who we work with to join in on that anti-idling campaign to help us identify where are these problem hotspots, where trucks tend to idle, and then we take that information to our council members, to the mayor's office, to the new Office of Sustainability, and up to Lansing to say, we can show you where this is happening. With research like Dr. Reiner's, health impacts cross over that, and it starts to make that case. One thing that has happened since the idling campaign got started is the city of Detroit has put in place an anti-idling ordinance. So what that means is that there is a requirement for truckers to shut off their engines instead of running them idle. What we're facing now is a challenge in enforcement. So on the one hand, we've got the requirement, and then we've got enforcement that's maybe lacking. So this summer, what we're working with Councilwoman Castaneda Lopez's office and Detroit Police Department, District Court, and residents is to say, well, what are the barriers to enforcing that idling ordinance, and how can we either amend the ordinance or do a better job enforcing it, because it is still a problem. And when you cut that idling, it's another direct decrease in emissions. One example I'll give is if you are standing next to a diesel truck that's idling and it's a hot day, the pollutants that are in diesel exhaust and the heat combine to create ground level ozone, which is toxic. Now that's real local pollution, right? Because it's right next to you. And so kids who are standing near school buses that might be idling, people who are just coming to and from wherever they're going and it's a congested intersection, or there's a truck that's doing work, otherwise would be doing work but is just sitting there. Within reason, we encourage residents to go ahead and talk to the driver of that vehicle. Say, hey, do you need to run that engine? Can you shut it off? And a lot of times they'll make that change. On Wayne State's campus, we worked with some students last month who were really interested in seeing change for the buses that come to Wayne State for tours and whatnot. A lot of times the bus drivers will just leave the vehicle running either for air conditioning or heat or because. But they could shut that engine off. They can go into one of the buildings, wait for the participants from their tour to be done with what they're doing, get back on the bus. So those situations too are ways that we can in the moment say, all right, if it's safe for me to approach this vehicle, I'm gonna do that. All right, I'm kind of going off on a tangent a little bit with my comments. So as was mentioned, Southwest Detroit is not alone in facing this type of concern. SDEV participates with the Moving Forward Network. It's an international network of individuals and groups that are on the ground fighting to address air pollution from diesel vehicles. So with those numbers, create power. in that network, we're able to access tools, ideas, and then tactics to take this kind of messaging to council members, businesses that operate fleets, up to Lansing, as I said, to really try to get this change going. And then at home, now that it's getting to be ozone action season, watch the news when you see that it's a poor air quality day. They'll say that during the weather report on the news. Notice that. If there's somebody in your family or you yourself who has a respiratory condition, give them a call. Say, hey, did you know it's an ozone action day? Try to take it easy today. You know, be aware of your symptoms. If things are getting rough, seek medical attention, of course. But being aware of when the air quality is poor and trying to adjust what you're doing and how you're doing it can keep yourself healthy, keep you out of the ER. And then other things that we can do for ozone action days. Now, this isn't diesel pollution related, but if you're gonna mow your lawn and it's a hot day in the summer, if you can, try to do that in the evening when it's less hot, because it's gonna reduce some of those pollutant compounds from forming and creating ground level ozone too. I also wanna call folks here. Check in with me after, go to SDEV's website, our social media accounts, Facebook, so that we can engage you in taking this messaging to your community leaders. If it's somebody on your block, if it's a pastor at your church, clubs you belong to, sports related, otherwise, start talking about this stuff. And the more people who know about it and who engage with these efforts to take this truth to power, we can make change and start to impact a more positive outcome. The other thing that our council members' office is working on this year that we're engaged in is to create truck corridors so that those diesel vehicles are going down maybe more appropriate thoroughfares and staying out of the residential neighborhoods, off the residential streets, and reducing some of that immediate local pollution right on the residential streets, or avoiding schools and preschools and other places where kids are, daycare centers and parks. So connect with us on the anti-idling campaign, the truck corridors work, diesel vehicle replacement efforts. We really need community engagement to help push those forward. Our voices together, we can cut diesel pollution, we can protect our own health, we can make positive change. I don't know if anyone has questions, but I'm happy to talk. Yes.
I have a question. If we see, a diesel vehicle that's clearly defective and spewing smoke, should we call you? Should we call the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality? And then what happens, how can we work on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you see a truck that is kicking out black soot or is idling for a long time, the first thing you want to do is, if you can, take down the plate number and document where you are, kind of know where you are, where it's happening. If you can see on the truck who owns it or operates the truck, knowing that information can help to get it to stop. Call the Detroit Police Department. They're the ones who currently have the authority to enforce the anti-idling ordinance. And I would say, please do also call Southwest Detroit Environmental Vision. We're working to track that. If we know sort of the common offenders who have equipment that is highly polluting, we approach them directly and work to get them to modernize their fleet and become aware of the problem and try to get them to change it. So our number is 313-842-1961. Put it in your phones. Give me a call. You see a truck, take down that information, call the police department to report it against the ordinance, call us. If you don't want to go right to the police department because that seems too extreme for what you want to do, call us directly and we'll work with you to try to come up with a way to get the company to change their practices. A lot of times that's all it takes is people noticing and then bringing it to a firm to get it to change. I appreciate everyone's time today. Thank you for being here.
Really appreciate it. Very good information. We've heard some things about what you could do to make a difference, to include supporting those organizations that are advocating for you. I think that's good.